ACC Part 3. Dan Rubenstein.
90 straight minutes of Wake Forest football.
That's all this is, right? That's all this is.
That's all I was promised. That's all I'm delivering on.
Go back and listen to Part 1. Go back and listen to Part 2. Part 1 was the big overarching stuff. What's new, broadly speaking, in the conference. Part 2, we unpacked the Florida State, Clemson, Miami dilemma that I think we have on this show. Talked about a bunch of other teams as well. We had 8 in total. Today, it is the remainder of the conference. 9 teams on today's episode. Bear in mind, the ACC expanded now. There are 17 teams, which does not fit neatly into any of our boxes here. To be clear, we had to move things around. There was some horse trading to figure out which teams are going to be on which episode. Alas, we're going to cover the balance of the conference on today's show.
Hey, sorry for the quick interruption, but it'd be incredible if you considered subscribing to the Solid Verbal YouTube channel right down below. Yes. Sorry, for the last 41 seconds after you said the word dilemma, I could only think about Kelly Rowland and Nelly. And were they texting on... it was on a Palm Pilot.
Yes.
But they were texting within Microsoft Excel.
I believe that's right. Something like that. Yes.
It was one of the rare times where I could have been the biggest hero ever. I don't want you to insert this in post. That as soon as you said dilemma, if I had, I would have told my grandchildren about that sound drop. And unfortunately, I don't just have at the ready.
Well, that's a shame. We'll try harder the next time.
Thank you.
But welcome back, ACC fans and college football fans alike. I'm Ty. He's Dan. This is the Solid Verbal. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new here, you know the drill. Maybe you don't. Hit follow, hit subscribe. That way you get all of our episodes, which now are dropping thrice weekly. Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. The plan, at least now in mid-July, is to continue with that schedule all throughout the season. We may add some other stuff in here and there, but we're going to try and stick to this through the college football season. We'd love to have you with us in the Verballerhood. If you are what we consider a super Verballer, if you really like what we're doing, going out to verballers.com, ad-free episodes, bonus content, you get access to the Discord, you get access to all the games, most of the games at a minimum that we're going to put out there as the fall gets a little bit closer. We've got a Run the Board Pick'em game, which we'll start talking more about as we get into August. You also, if you are ever so inclined, can play with the Verballerhood in our vast online dynasty. You and I are co-managing a team this year.
That's true.
We are going to be Miami, which I said 2 episodes ago.
True.
I had an opportunity to play with Miami against another Verballer, was very pleased with Cam Ward.
How'd we do?
Very pleased with Cam Ward, Damian Martinez. I think you're going to be sort of the recruiting analyst.
Oh, God.
I think you're going to be the recruiting guy.
Just because of my proximity to Dan Lanning and the success he's having on the trail?
I would say more due to your lack of proximity to available time having 2 children.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I'll play some of the games at night. We'll both tag team this thing, but I'm going to lean on you for recruiting direction and overall vision for the program. And to that end, I would say Damian Martinez and running the football is a lot of fun. And so we should just try to do more of that.
Do you think Jody with an I, my lovely bride, will be impressed when I regale her of stories of successfully recruiting digital children?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Okay. Just making sure.
I have not had that conversation yet with Solid Life Kate.
You're going to pump your fist and she's going to be like, what's going on? And she was like, I just landed Landon Anderson. And you'd be like, what does that mean? And you're just like, well, he is a make-believe digital teenager who is super interested in playing for my make-believe video game team. And she's going to be like, Ty, you've never been sexier.
I think that's the exact...
I've never been more attracted to you.
The exact response that I'm waiting for. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what's going to happen. Anyway, verballers.com is where you can go for more on that. And rate, review the show if you like what we're doing. It helps sort of grow the footprint. If nothing more, it lets other people know that there are other folks out here who enjoy the show, of which there are many and thousands. We've got a big audience we're grateful for, but ratings, reviews, all that stuff helps. So
definitely.
With all that being said, you can go back and listen to the episode that we did last week if you are interested in
part 2 and part 1.
The overarching themes and the teams that we talked about in our last episode. On today's episode, we've got 9 teams that we're going to cover. We're going to start with Louisville, NC State, and Virginia Tech, those teams that we mentioned sort of being lurkers, kind of being in the hunt on some level for the ACC. We're going to talk about some of the plucky teams that you and I are interested in, namely Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and UVA. And in addition to that, Boston College. I know we disagreed a little bit on BC, but I'm interested in them. I think they're plucky. And we'll close things out, of course, by talking about Duke and Wake Forest, 2 teams that, for better or worse, we have near the bottom of our ACC tiers, Dan. 9 teams. 9 teams today. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with NC State, because it's sort of been the off-season of NC State on the Solid Verbal, in that we've done an NC State specific show and talking about the impact of Grayson McCall. Here's what I want to talk about with NC State. I don't think I recognized and gave the necessary due to KC or Kevin Concepcion.
Oh my God. All right. So pause right there.
Pause.
Welcome to the danger zone.
The ACC.
I had to slip that in. I forgot I'm not in mid-season form yet.
Yeah.
And there is no one better to label as dangerous than KC Concepcion. I love KC Concepcion.
Yes. Okay. NC State, which I think when you drive by real quickly, you'll be like, ooh, they could be interesting if Grayson McCall is up to the task, right? NC State is a lot of things. NC State is a team that if they can get the secondary figured out, if they've got, pop has been our word of the last year or two, but they've been a team that has been more interested in the short stuff on offense. They'll have a good running back here. They'll have a good receiver, a tight end there, but they haven't been a program that has consistently stretched the field as a means and a way to win 8-9 games.
Yeah.
They've done it primarily with defense and smart decision-making on offense and, a lack of carelessness on offense. But right away, and he was a freshman last year, Kevin Concepcion, they we have to get him the ball as creatively as humanly possible. And whether that's in the slot, whether that's outside, whether that's lining him up in the backfield, whether that's motioning him to get him on the edge and fly sweep type stuff, he looks like no NC State receiver has looked in a while. He's got that burst. He's got that sort of indefinable it quality that they had to sort of figure out creative ways to get him the ball. Now it's Grayson McCall. They haven't perhaps had a quarterback with the upside of Grayson McCall, and that he had that upside in a very specific offense at Coastal Carolina. We'll see on the offensive line. They bring in Jordan Waters, a very dependable running back, I would say, from Duke, which I think is a quality move to build out, to buttress that depth tie.
Fantastic word, Dan. Continue.
Is that good? Did I use it correctly?
Absolutely. It's not as good as my vociferous or vehement.
It's really good.
From the last episode, but it's in the same class. Continue.
There's a lot to like about. I think the best of Robert Anae, who's been around the ACC at both Virginia and I believe Syracuse, now at NC State. So there's a familiarity there. And as much as anybody can be familiar with a changing power conference, I think there's a lot to like about NC State. And defensively, they had basically, he was the best linebacker in the conference last year. Peyton Wilson was everywhere. He's gone. There's still a lot to like. Linebackers new, secondary is somewhat new. I think there's a lot to like up front on this defense. Tony Gibson has had a good amount of success for NC State. The concern with labeling NC State a contender, which we talked about on that first episode, is by now, if NC State was that contention type program and occasionally in the ACC Conference Championship Game type program, they would have been doing it more often than they have.
Yeah, right.
Which is to say, not at all. So there are reasons to believe in NC State. Their schedule is such when you look at NC State. They have Tennessee. It's in Charlotte. We'll see. New quarterback for Tennessee. I think Tennessee clearly has more firepower right now than NC State, but who knows with the new quarterback. They're at Clemson. That's a difficult September to have both of those matchups early on. But this is an NC State team with no FSU. I don't believe they have Miami or Louisville. Their long trip across the country in the new look ACC is at Cal in October. I'm not terrified of that. And they do finish on the road rivalry game at North Carolina, which cannot be discounted. But all things considered, and we talked about this with Corey on our NC State specific episode, the will it ever happen? Like, everything's kind of pointing at 2024 for NC State in the way that they've loaded up in the portal, in the way that the schedule works out. Like, we ended that interview with like, if not now, when, with NC State. And that's kind of how I feel, which is why I think they realize it internally. Schedule-wise, it's great. Like, I am just very high on NC State. That means that they can win 10. It doesn't mean they're winning the conference. They can win 10 because things look good enough that they can split Clemson, Tennessee early.
I could see 2 losses.
Yeah.
I can't see 4. And
no,
that's why I am heavy on over 8.5 for NC State.
Oh, more takes. Why it burns.
I'll even turn the smoke on in the volcano for that one, Dan.
Yeah.
Smoking behind me. I love the schedule. It's the easiest schedule in the ACC. You mentioned they got the neutral siter against Tennessee. You mentioned the Clemson in week 4. Otherwise, like, you really have to furrow your brow and try to figure out what is the next toughest game on the schedule. It's either at Georgia Tech or at North Carolina in the rivalry game. One of those last 2 games to close out the season. You really have to try and squint to find it because it is very favorable for NC State.
Do you know how many games they could potentially play against god-awful defenses?
It's a lot.
Their god-awful defensive quotient.
It's over half of their schedule, easily.
Western Carolina, Louisiana Tech, Northern Illinois. We'll see. Syracuse, I think, will be pretty good. Cal, Stanford, Duke, Georgia Tech, North Carolina. All those teams will not have god-awful defenses, but a chunk of them might. And that's great if you're an NC State fan. If not now, when? I'm in on NC State at, I think, 10-2.
Would you go over 8.5? Do you feel good about that?
Yes, I would go over 8.
Do you want me to throw that in the volcano for
Please
you too?
Please do.
Okay.
Yes.
More takes. Why it burns.
By the way, for anybody new here, we built this model volcano behind me. If you're watching the video, we call it Take a Toa. We put all of our hot takes into the volcano at some point, either mid-season or post-season. We'll review all of our takes. We're doing this for content after all.
We're doing it. And by the way, that's not even to mention Noah Rogers, former 5-star transferring in from Ohio State, which could give Kevin Concepcion, some breathing room, right, to open things up a little bit more. Could be a gravitational receiving situation. There's a lot of upperclassmen on this defense. They filled in the gaps in the secondary via the portal. I'm not always like crazy about that, but I think there's enough to like that. You know, the ratio of encouraged to worried is pretty dramatic in the encouraged direction.
What's interesting about NC State, totally separate from all the other stuff that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I guess kind of an added point.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely do we have a situation where we know before the season that this has got to be the year. We oftentimes say it in retrospect. Oh, man, looking back and how things shook out, this was the year and they missed the window. No. We know that this is the year for NC State.
I think so.
This is the year. This is the year that it has to happen. And I'm curious.
They basically need, and I don't know if it's a road thing, but they lose 24-3 to Duke last year. NC State does. If they can avoid the random embarrassments, and you circled Georgia Tech or North Carolina, maybe Cal is the random embarrassment on the road across the country. I don't know. That to me is the difference between 9-3 and 10-2. Getting rid of the random embarrassment.
That has been the thing. We talked about that with Corey. They've had these games that are just sort of mind-boggling. Somehow find a way to lose
They lose
these games.
to Syracuse 24-9 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Lose to BC 2 years ago. Like, random embarrassment. And there's nothing wrong with losing, fundamentally to either of those teams, but I don't think it's of NC State's caliber.
Well, it's got to be now or never. And I'm with you. I don't really have much more to add. I think we feel very similar on the NC State side. And it's not just because we did the show. We felt that way. That's the reason we did the show, because we were pretty high on NC State. So we'll see. Let me pivot off of NC State then, and let's talk about North Carolina.
Yeah.
So we mentioned this game happens at the end of the year. North Carolina was 8-5 last year. They lost the Duke's Mayo Bowl to West Virginia. Said it earlier, I love Amari and Hampton, their running back. I love Bryson Nesbitt, their tight end. Might be the best two at their respective positions in the ACC. Across the board, North Carolina, I think, is fine at the skill positions. They'll be just fine there. My problem is I'm not in love with Max Johnson as the new starting quarterback, especially behind what appears to be a new offensive line. Those things taken in tandem, I think, magnify the fact that Max Johnson is an injury risk. So that concerns me. The defense is ever the concern for North Carolina. I feel like it's been that way almost in perpetuity. We had moments here and there, but it's just never gotten good. Now they're doing Geoff Collins as a defensive coordinator. I'm just not sure it's a coaching thing that can fix that, or it's a talent thing, or if it's a vision thing that's going to supersede whoever the defensive coordinator is. So those are the 2.5 issues that I have with North Carolina. Over under is 7.5 for the Tar Heels this year, Dan. Where do you stand?
I think North Carolina is fine. I think some of the concerns are overblown, that, going from two what seem to be top flight quarterbacks in Sam Howell and Drake May to what will probably be Max Johnson is a step down, that Mack Brown is getting a little bit long in the tooth and can't figure out defensive coordinator. And I think Chip Lindsey was largely pretty good last year with, he saw that Omari and Hampton was succeeding and leaned on that as much as he could. But, sort of disappointing that they couldn't get more out of Drake May's final season, and given some of the receiving firepower they had last year, that they had an opportunity to, with even a lackluster defense that could last all year long, to really do something special. They lose to Virginia and Georgia Tech, I believe, in consecutive weeks after starting out 6-0, I believe, last year. And the question now is, you mentioned offensive line, and we've talked about offensive line with North Carolina, is their season essentially hinges on if Geoff Collins can get pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, completely.
Their secondary was far too shaky, but you're able to cover up for that on a certain level if you can get after the quarterback in creative ways and create some havoc and make the quarterback see ghosts across the middle or whatever. And it's not that North Carolina has a bad roster. I just think between, Jay Bateman and Gene Chizik, Mack Brown has gone after the wrong guy to succeed and grow in the ACC defensively. Now, is Geoff Collins at the point of his career where he's energized and has enough talent to run the systems he wants to run like he did in the SEC? Unclear. But again, if you can find creative ways to get pressure, it covers up for a lot. And so I think North Carolina can win 8 games. What is their over-under?
7.5.
So I think they can win 8 games. Their schedule is, and I'm pulling it up right now, they have they're at Minnesota, which should be okay. They handled them last year. They have a new look JMU, both in September. The middle 4 is what I have down here as a Geoff Collins proof of concept. At Duke, Pitt, Georgia Tech, at UVA.
No.
They seem like they should have more talent than all of those teams. If Geoff Collins can get enough stops against them, I think they win 8 games. And I don't know if that's necessarily successful, but I think they can win 8+ games given this schedule, given what the upside is. I'm not a big Max Johnson fan. He just holds on to the ball for too long. And I know they bring in his brother as well from Texas A&M. The talent is there. They're at Florida State relatively late in the year, and we mentioned NC State at home. But all things considered, no Louisville, no Miami, no Clemson. I'm not saying all things are pointed to this year for Mack Brown and North Carolina, but if he doesn't do it against this schedule, that's where you're like, man, I don't know if it's happening for this program.
I think that's the key point, because this is a very favorable schedule.
Yeah.
It is. And
no Cuse, by the way. That's the big one for me.
Of course, no Syracuse.
Yeah.
The fact that the over-under is 7.5 against the schedule, I think, tells you a lot of what Vegas thinks of North Carolina. Yeah. And it is some combination of what I described earlier. The known issues with the defense, the questions about which direction the offense heads. To your point, though, they look more talented than most of the teams on the schedule. They really do. And, outside of Florida State, North Carolina State, maybe a couple other ones that we could discuss, feels like they should be in line for a really good season.
There's no obvious danger until November.
No, there isn't.
If the act is together, they're 8-0 against Florida State.
I agree. All right.
Danger, right? Danger?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Let's talk some Louisville.
Yeah.
Big season last year, right? 10-4.
Yeah.
Lost the Holiday Bowl to USC and Miller Moss.
Miller Moss.
6 touchdown Miller Moss.
Yeah.
But
lost the Kentucky game. Lost Florida State.
But incredible first season on the job for Jeff Brohm. And I think that goes without saying. But they're dangerous because he's the coach.
Yep.
The way he cobbled that together, that roster came together late, brought in a bunch of transfers, won 10 games, beat Notre Dame. It was impressive. It was impressive. If you're a Louisville fan, you're ecstatic with the way that year one went. Louisville is going to be dangerous for as long as he's the coach, full stop. I think a lot of momentum is on that program right now. They're building something, and it feels that way. That said, I was a little bit surprised to look at the over-under and see that it was only 8.5. I was almost offended by that, Dan. 8.5, really? Getting my take-a-toe sound ready.
How good is the backup quarterback?
Yeah, loading up some smoke in it, you know? Yeah. 8.5 feels low. But then I did the work. I like Louisville. I do. I like them primarily because of their defense. You could sell me on them having the top defensive line in the conference. I think they're really good on all 3 levels of their defense, and it's a good schedule, too. If they beat the teams they're supposed to beat, they should be 9-3 or 8-4. They're at Notre Dame at the end of September in a revenge game for Notre Dame, mind you. Notre Dame right now, these early lines don't mean anything, but Notre Dame's favored by about 10 points. Okay. They've got SMU at home a week later, which I still maintain could be tricky, but we disagree on that point. They've got a run of Miami, at Boston College, and at Clemson at the end of October, start of November. And then they close out on the road at Kentucky. So it's not super easy, but it's spaced out well. And again, if they win the games they should win, they should be at or near this over-under. So 8.5 makes sense to me. Where I'm a little bit skittish, though, is offense. This is a different type of challenge for Jeff Brohm this year because they're replacing Jack Plummer with Tyler Shough. Jawar Jordan, Isaac Garendo are gone. It's Maurice Taylor and Donald Chaney who comes over from Miami. He's cobbled together a receiving core with transfers like Ja'Cory Brooks, who I like.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no how Tyler Shough is going the whole year without getting hurt.
Yeah.
And
Colin Lacey, yeah.
And I hate to say that because I feel like a jerk and I don't want to see him get hurt. But again, you only get to play 7 seasons if you're somewhat injury prone. Okay?
Yeah.
That's just the way it works.
And look, it is almost assuredly just bad luck.
Bad luck, yeah.
But
a lot of bad luck, right?
Yeah,
enough bad luck where you wonder if it's more than luck.
Yeah.
And so there's that side of it. I don't think that the running backs offer as much of a home run threat as a guy like a Jawar Jordan last year.
Yeah, Garendo had a huge Holiday Bowl too, yeah.
You'll recall, like, we did a specific Louisville episode where we broke down the defense last year, or the offense, excuse me, and how they were building this and how Jack Plummer was having so much success. And a lot of it was on the back of really successful play action passing.
Mm-hmm.
Without those home run threats in the rushing game, I don't think the play action is going to be as successful this year if that is the direction that Brohm chooses to go. So they're going to need to play a little bit differently on offense this year. I have confidence that Jeff Brom's going to figure it out. There just aren't a whole lot of names on the 2 deep that scare the hell out of me.
Well, it's also like kind of a full line change too.
Yeah.
Right? Via the portal where you're like, oh, well, this guy and Jeff Brohm, this is what they did last year. Like, well, there's not a lot of that.
So like the caveat is you could say, well, wasn't the same thing true last year?
Sure.
Touche. It was. Absolutely. And if I'm sitting here December 5th, red-faced because I was dead wrong about Louisville, who just played for and maybe won or came close to a conference championship, then I'm willing to take that lump. But this just feels different to me this season. So I'm selling Louisville. I think a good season. I'm not saying they're bottoming out or anything like that. I still believe in Jeff Brohm and the momentum he is building at Louisville. He has proven I think, very, very adept at going out and getting guys in the portal that can come in and help right away. Look at what he did last year. It was a masterful job. He's a good coach. I like this program. Again, it's just this is a different equation for me this year, so I'm going to sell Louisville.
Yeah, and quality wins last year in the middle part of that schedule before they seemed to run out of gas against Florida State and Kentucky, and I guess USC. Yeah, I just don't know how replicable it is year over year over year. I think their backup quarterback is Pierce Clarkson, son of quarterback guru Steve Clarkson.
That's right.
From out west.
That's right.
I just have to note that when Tyler Shough is your starter, who the backup is. There's a lot of reasons to like Louisville. I'm sort of curious about the line change element of this all.
Yeah.
That you're putting it together, a brand new team year over year. What does that do to rhythm in year two when it's not year two for a lot of these guys? It's a year one Louisville team with Jeff Brohm. And so he's more comfortable there. He has a better sense. He and the staff have worked together for a year, so it is year two in some regards. But I don't know. I think that the ACC, the quality quotient is pretty high, that I think it's going to be tougher in year two. And so, yeah, I have them 7-8 wins, somewhere in there.
And plus,
but not the most dangerous.
Plus, Dan, you don't always hit on these portal guys.
No.
Just because they're names that we know does not mean that they're going to make anything better.
Or fit, yeah.
It is about fit. I like Brohm, but I don't know. I'm with you. It just, too much is new. Too much is new. There's not enough for me to grasp onto. Same was true last year. I get it.
Yep.
Just feels like a different situation this year is the best.
By the way, Tyler Shough recruited at Oregon by both Mark Helfrich and Willie Taggart. It's been a minute.
I want him to stay healthy too.
Yeah, that'd be a great story.
It really
Close
would.
out big.
It really would. And was it Andy Staples we put something in Takatoa for Andy when we had him on back
when
in
he's
February.
Like this year's, Michael Penix?
You
Is
think
that what he
this
said?
year's Michael Penix could be Tyler Shough?
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm not rooting against it.
Fair enough. Next team.
Virginia Tech, Dan. Virginia Tech. So you put Virginia Tech, I think, a little bit higher in your tiers than I initially did, and we kind of negotiated and came to a place where we both felt comfortable labeling them as like an outsider-ish, but still maybe a contender. My question that I asked in part one, and that I'll pose again to you now, is do we like Virginia Tech more because of the progress we saw in the team they have coming back?
Yeah.
Or because the schedule is very, very favorable?
You know, one of the things that has occurred to me is for so many of these teams, we're saying the schedule is favorable, that we're just going to be wrong about like 2 or 3 of these teams' schedules. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That we immediately evaluate them as easy and we're like, well, turns out not so easy. What do I like about Virginia Tech? I like that Virginia Tech is one of like 5 teams who has, I think, pretty great reason to be optimistic about where their quarterback situation is headed because of Kyron Drone's second half of the season last year. He wasn't always like the most developed thrower downfield, but given his athleticism, given the winning football Virginia Tech played behind him, and I would argue the pass rush specifically on defense, they bring back a ton on defense. I like the weapons, especially as the weapons. I think it's Ali Jennings who should be healthy this year in the receiving core alongside Daquan Felton. Like, they're in a good spot there. To me right now, it's a question of depth. It's a question of winning close. It's a question of not feeling the off-season lag and how they deal with off-season expectations, given how they finished last year. But I don't know, man. There's a lot to like about Virginia Tech right now. So they do the sort of flip-floppy thing after the bye week last year. They beat Syracuse, Boston College, and Virginia, which whatever. But, you know, a bowl win over Tulane isn't nothing, even given I don't think Michael Pratt played in that game. They won more games they've been supposed to win. That's barely English, Ty. They won more games they were supposed to win, which is the step in the right direction. Schedule-wise this year, you mentioned that it appears to be in a good place. I will mention they lose to Marshall and Rutgers last year early. There's recent history of September looking like a landmine to Brent Pry and Kyron Drones. I'm not fully going to write off Vanderbilt, especially because it's kind of a pretty new look Vanderbilt in both good and not so good ways, but it's Diego Pavia and Jerry Kill, and it's at Vanderbilt. Just because they have that history of losing to teams they should be beating. Otherwise, they do have the mileage plus double dip at Miami at Stanford. But I have down here Georgia Tech at Syracuse and Clemson in consecutive weeks. It's a nice late proof of concept if there's something like 6-1 going into that stretch. That like if Virginia Tech is legit contending, maybe not a favorite, but if they're just like in that conversation, then that's an interesting stretch that I think could speak volumes about what Brent Pry has done and where that program is heading.
Would you say that we're dronies? What's the moniker we want to go with here? Because we're both pretty high on Kyron drones. We need something that's easy, that rolls off the tongue, maybe that we could put on a shirt if it gets to that, but something that the verballerhood can sink its teeth into.
I mean, we could just do something with the word drone. That's an actual word. Flying the drone, flying the drones.
The drone zone.
Drone zone's not bad.
Living in the drone zone.
Yeah.
We had a cone zone back in the day where Jack Cohn was, doing his thing at Wisconsin and Notre Dame. So it'd be nice to pull that back out.
But you also have Kyron rhymes with siren, something there.
A Kyron siren isn't bad for a Saturday Night Live show.
That's true. That's the sound effect that we can pull. That's no problem.
All right, I'm jotting these down. I actually have a notepad with me now so I can jot down our stupidity.
Oh, man. Look at you.
Yeah, I'm growing as a person.
Just hitting staples for your legal pads. It's great.
8 wins is the over-under for Virginia Tech. I like the schedule. I like the team. I don't really have much more to add. I am ready to ring the Kyron siren. I am ready to fly the drone. Let's do this, Virginia Tech. I don't know if this is the year in the same way that we said it is for NC State, but it is certainly another chance for Brent Pry and this program to take a step forward. And
yeah, the big thing, and I rewatched the NC State Virginia Tech game because I was going back and looking at some back half games last year, and man, Drones was just under fire. This was not a line that was consistently protecting him at all. And so that to me is the big thing. It's either they protect him or they figure out ways to get the ball out of his hands quickly and creatively. Otherwise, I don't know if he's going to be standing by mid-year. Like, I think there's considerable amount of worry on my end that this is not an offensive line that fits in with the rest of the optimism surrounding this program.
Another team that I think we're in relative agreement on is Georgia Tech. I think so. We've enjoyed covering this Georgia Tech team. And especially since Brent Key took over, the way they play.
Did we just double Brent right now?
I think we're doing a double
Pry
Brent.
to Key? All right. Yeah. I like that.
The way he took over that program, they played hard for him. We've seen strides in some areas, not in others. So 7-6 a year ago, they went to the Gasparilla Bowl. They beat UCF. I feel like every year we have to qualify all the nice things we want to say about Georgia Tech by also saying, but the schedule's brutal.
Right.
Like every year, the schedule's murder.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, I mean, look, you always have to include the Georgia calculation.
The Georgia
which is so brutal. You're right.
But like, listen to this. So they open the year in Ireland against Florida State. Then they're on the road at Louisville. Their last game of September. Tough September.
Yeah.
Listen to their last 5 games, Dan. Listen to this.
I'm ready.
Notre Dame in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, quote-unquote neutral site. At Virginia Tech, home against Miami, home against NC State, on the road against Georgia. A few bye weeks mixed in there, but does that matter to you? Like, brutal. Brutal. What are you supposed to do against that?
Maybe Georgia Tech is the one who knocks. Maybe they're the ones who should be feared. Think about it like that, Ty.
So they're dangerous because they can score.
Yes.
This offense should be pretty good. Probably one of the best.
Buster Faulkner? Is that the name of their? Did I just make that up? Their offensive coordinator from Georgia?
I believe you're right about that, yes.
Yeah.
I think their offense will be pretty good. I think it's going to be one of the best in the conference. Not the best, but one of the 4 or 5 best.
Okay.
Haynes King, one of our favorites here. He's back at quarterback. He can run. He can throw. Can also throw interceptions, which is not good. Definitely a concern. But in total, 8 starters back, including 4 guys from a line that I think improved last season. Not out of the question that they, as I said earlier on our last episode, not out of the question that August the 25th, whenever it is, we're talking about Georgia Tech knocking off Florida State in Ireland because of the offense.
And it's a great time to get them.
Great time. The best time.
Has DJU ever won a game on European soil?
Not that I'm aware
My
of.
research has turned up 0 wins
Not that I'm
for
aware of.
DJU.
They will catch somebody this year. At a minimum, they're going to put the fear of God into a handful of better teams, quote unquote, better teams on the schedule. Because the offense is high powered, because the offense can score.
By the way, Jamal Haynes, really fun. Double Haynes backfield.
Absolutely. The counter to that is the defense. Okay. Yeah. Why are they dangerous? Why are they in danger, to continue the theme here? They're in danger because the defense was really bad last year. So what did Brent Key do? He goes out, he hires Tyler Santucci, who did a really good job with Duke last year. And they're hopeful that he can lead something of a turnaround effort. Tech is down a bunch of guys. 2 guys on the D-line are gone. 3 of 5 guys in the linebacking core are gone. 5 of 10 defensive backs are gone. So it's kind of like starting anew in a sense. But Tyler Santucci, like in the time that he was at Duke and other places before that, he has been good about leading a turnaround effort in a very short period of time. That is what they're hopeful for this year.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say about Georgia Tech. All right.
Okay.
Some very obvious pros, some very obvious cons. A bit of a half team, if I'm being honest here. But we have a lot of people that listen to this show who don't have a team. They don't have a favorite team. They like college football. They like the soothing tones of my voice.
Oh, of course.
They don't like you. Nobody likes you.
No, it's
I
okay.
like you.
Yeah.
But nobody else likes you. Okay? Let's be honest.
Wow, man. Okay.
Just being straight with you, man. This is what we do.
Damn.
I'm kidding. You know that.
Your mom likes me.
My mom likes you more than she likes me.
That's okay. Yeah.
Georgia Tech is a great candidate to be your team. If you fall into that category, they're a great candidate for that because you get to see them play a bunch of good teams. They're going to put up points, have a fun offense with a fun quarterback, the double Haynes backfield. Mm-hmm. Haynes your way.
Do you have any fun facts about Bobby Dodd?
There is a hidden grandstand underneath the west side of the stadium.
There's a hidden, like, bleachers?
Bleachers, yeah. It's the oldest stadium in major college football.
Okay.
And as they expanded the stadium over the years, they did not knock down the old west grandstand. And so they just built over it. You can't get down there if you're a spectator, but people who like run things, I think they use it for storage. It's still down there. You can see it. I made a video of this a couple of years ago. They use it for storage. You can still see the old west grandstand. It's just concealed beneath existing Bobby Dodd Stadium. Yeah. So that's fun. You know, it's a historic program. They're just, I think they're going to catch somebody. I think that makes them fun to watch. It may be annoying if you're a Tech fan, an actual Tech fan, to watch the defense, and I think there'll still be struggles, but they'll be fun. So if you're looking for a team.
They've been a little bit like, they're not still rebuilding post-option, but there is that vibe that they're still working their way back. Like it's a remodel that's been taken. They keep finding termites. You know, there's structural issues. The basement keeps flooding because there's a weird drainage thing. Like they keep finding issues, but the house is looking nicer and nicer, Ty. The house is coming together.
I have a friend who's been working on a basement project for 5 years.
What has he or she been doing down there?
I have no idea.
You know what that means.
Well,
dungeon. Obvious dungeon.
Yeah. He's been working on this basement project for 5 years. It's still never done. Every time we go over there, it seems like he's made a little bit of progress, but it's the longest basement remodel ever.
Has he ever asked you to sit in a swing because he's doing some weight load management type stuff? No? Okay.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
No. So that's all I have to say about Tech. I don't know. I mean, they will be fun. If you're looking for a team, they're a great candidate. But don't expect much defense. Hopefully the Tyler Santucci thing works. And hopefully Haynes King stays fun and healthy, and they continue scoring points. That'll make the season interesting, if nothing more.
Agree.
And you know I love you. I felt bad about that.
Oh, man.
I do like you.
I have to do the rest of the ACC preview with this hanging over my head? You expect me to talk about Virginia football at this point?
We've got Virginia, Duke, Wake, and Boston College left. So,
all right.
2 for me, 2 for you. You want to go to Virginia next?
Let's do it.
You like Virginia more than I do.
I do.
3-9 a year ago. My questions are, is it going to be Calandria or Musket at quarterback? And will the line improve / will any of the defense improve?
I don't know. Tony Musket, I think, had a good spring game, so I guess the job is open. I liked receiver development last year with Malik Washington, and now they get your guy, right? Chris Tyree.
Yeah.
Stepping in.
Yep.
You always had a soft spot for Chris Tyree.
I did.
The best of Chris Tyree.
I did.
Will get open deep and have a 73-yard touchdown and do nothing else, right?
Yeah.
That's the sort of experience, and that's too bad. I hope it works out for him at Virginia. He's from Virginia, right?
He's from Virginia. Yeah, he's from Virginia. When Chris Tyree was recruited at Notre Dame, I was convinced that he was going to be like the next Reggie Bush.
Right.
That was my thought. And it didn't really work out. But he's bounced around now from different positions. He's still playing with Virginia, transferred out there for his final season. So I'm curious to see him, if nothing more, now that he's a full-time wideout.
Right. So Virginia last year, the reason why I'm somewhat high on Virginia, I think they have a ways to go, but defensively, I think they've had moments like quarters, halves, a game here or there. Even though the numbers are bad, even though the performances are disappointing, I think they bring back enough. They lost a bunch of close games, 1-score games. They fought and played a bunch of decent to good programs pretty close. I think it's an overtime loss to Miami. They have that nice, they hold on. They probably shouldn't have beaten North Carolina, but they do beat North Carolina. They lose close to NC State and Boston College. They lose to James Madison, which is a good James Madison team. Got Kurt Cignetti a new job. But I don't know, even late in the season, beating Duke right there with Louisville on the road. There is something to me about the competitive nature of the Who's right now with Tony Elliott. If it's Anthony Calandria, Tony Calandria or whatever, he was a wild card. He's young. He threw a bunch of picks. I think that can be improved upon. I think you can, speed goes a long way for me, that you can cover up some deficiencies if you can creatively get that, the speed and space kind of thing. And I think there's potential, in that front seven, especially on defense, second, third team, all ACC type guys. I don't think it's full on star power, but I think guys can emerge there. And so to me, it's any sort of pass rush. May have had the worst pass rush in America. So start there, right? If it goes from god awful to just bad or pretty bad, that's a big improvement. There's definite room to grow. Schedule is such, as I pull it up in front of me and pull up my notes in front of me. Virginia does have Maryland early, which we'll see. That's a team making a bunch of new, starting a bunch of new dudes. And as you continue to point out to me, you're always looking for an ample bottom half.
Always. And
that's what Virginia has.
Yeah.
Right here. Virginia consecutively. Louisville at Clemson, North Carolina at Pitt, at Notre Dame, SMU at Virginia Tech in the rivalry.
Ouch, 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 ouch.
I don't know. I think Virginia is that program that a lot of people are overlooking, probably including me all off season long, but appear in the right place at the right time for them on their schedule that we're going to look up, and they're going to be like that Boston College type 5-7, 6-6 and quietly making progress. So that's how I feel about Virginia. If they throw fewer interceptions and get after the quarterback a little bit more, I think they could flirt with 500-ish in a bowl.
They were in 7 1-score games last year.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those stats that I tend to look at, especially when you're talking about a 3-9 team like Virginia was last year. Are they giving up? Are they playing hard?
Agree.
We came on the air how many times last year on Saturday nights when we did our live thing, talking about how Virginia played somebody tight, how Virginia was a tough out. And I think that more than anything, right, it's sort of the opposite of your point about SMU and how they did against some of the better teams on their schedule. Virginia, against a lot of good teams that they played last year, played them pretty tight. They were in those games. And so it'll be interesting to see now everything you said about the defensive line and the pass rush, and of course, just the defense more broadly. All that stuff's very accurate. But I'm curious to see with the fight that they showed a year ago, if they're able to build on that at all and maybe take some of these teams out. Their over-under is 4.5. So Vegas is expecting at least a little bit of an improvement on the win-loss side of things, albeit not much.
Yeah. Look, at Malachi Fields and Chris Tyree, I think are a nice 1-2 at receiver. And I don't know. I just feel like when a defense is so catastrophically bad that just a little bit of time, they return a bunch and get healthier. I just think there's opportunity for my always promising improvement to bad.
Yeah. Okay. Another team with a 4.5 over-under is Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Wake was 4-8 a year ago in the wake of Sam Hartman leaving, going to Notre Dame. This year, 6th in returning production, but an open question to me whether that means they'll actually be better. Like, that doesn't always mean you're going to improve just because you're bringing back a lot. They are bringing in Hank Bachmeier, who's still playing quarterback.
They are.
Last year, he was at Louisiana Tech. The year before that at Boise. I think he's better than what they had. As I said, one of the last 2 episodes, like, I was never a huge Mitch Griffiths guy. They need to find some way to get more pop out of that passing game and be better in the red zone, because last year was just a free fall compared to previous teams that they had. I looked for a while at this over-under because I can count 3 easy wins on this schedule. I couldn't find 2 others that I felt great about. So in terms of the over-under anyway, 4.5, I'm staying away from Wake Forest. But what is kind of like the broad theme of this program right now? What is the trajectory of things under Dave Clawson?
So technically speaking, they were another one of those programs that, even though they were clearly worse than basically everybody they played last year, they lose to Clemson by 5. They lose to Syracuse on the road by 4. They lose to Duke by 3. Like, they're not fully out of all of these games. My general view on Dave Clawson is if he has a serviceable quarterback and a threat or 2, not even a star, but a threat or 2 at receiver, it's going to be a pain in the ass. And I think Hank Bachmeier is serviceable enough that he's played enough snaps at Louisiana Tech and Boise State.
Yeah.
That, like, he will be a jump from where they were last year. And I think that's significant. I don't know if they're winning 4 or 5, 6 games or something like that. But in terms of giving an ACC coach the benefit of the doubt to get more out of less, I think Dave Clawson's absolutely in that conversation. I think there's every reason to believe that they can squeeze every point out of this offense because they will be overlooked because of the teams that we have talked about being high on. The fact that we do say a team's schedule is great because they only play Wake Forest and then they lose to Wake Forest, or Wake Forest drops 50 on them like they did with Clemson a few years ago. Like, this team isn't terribly removed from success. I think it was 2021 was their big year with Clawson. So I'm willing to believe that Wake Forest at the end, when all is said and done, is like a 5-6 win team. But I'm with you that I just don't see it on my legal pad.
Yeah.
That I'm positive they're going to win. What did you say? It was 5.5?
4.5.
4.5?
4.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Because of their early schedule, there are wins there. I don't know, man. This is exactly like, I don't have good reason to love Wake Forest beyond liking the names of Hank Bachmeier's brother, and actually 2 brothers. It's Tiger and Bear, I believe.
Tiger, Bear, and there's also a Buck in there. Don't forget about Buck.
There's a Buck Bachmeier?
Yeah.
That's going to be very difficult for me in my elder age. I don't know. I refuse to bury Wake Forest is what I'm saying. I just refuse to do it because there is that competitive spirit there, and them going 5-7 is not outlandish to me.
Final 2 teams, Dan.
Okay.
At long last, we get to talk about Boston College.
That's another team we're probably discounting.
I'm not discounting.
When we say a team schedule is easy, you're not discounting.
I'm not discounting them.
Yeah.
I'm not at all. So their over-under's 5. They were 7-6 last year. They beat SMU, as you like to point out, in the Wasabi Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But the big story was that Jeff Hafley walked away, sort of randomly, to become the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. One of those moves that everybody projected kind of their thoughts on the state of college football onto it. You know, like, oh, where is college football as a sport if head coaches are leaving to be coordinators?
That's a good job. Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. But you can make the case now that they upgraded. I don't know if I'm making that case, but you could make the case that getting Bill O'Brien at Boston College is an upgrade. Bill O'Brien certainly has more head coaching experience. He's certainly
more accolades.
A native son of Boston. He's a noted quarterback whisperer. Questionable NFL GM.
No, not questionable. Bad.
Bad?
Yeah.
Sure.
As far as I can tell. Yeah.
Not a good GM. Not great at fantasy football, but in terms of actually coaching, pretty good. And he's the guy now. He was going to be the guy at Ohio State as the offensive coordinator, but then ended up reversing course after this job became available. He can be closer to home and all that. So yada, yada, yada. It's Bill O'Brien, B.O.B., running the show at BC this year. I have slowly been talking myself into Boston College, and not as like an ACC contender or anything like that, but as a team that other people are discounting that I think might be better this year in a transition year than many are giving them credit for. And it starts mainly because of Thomas Castellanos, their quarterback. He took over that job just a couple possessions, literal possessions, into the Boston College season last year. And he ended up as their leading rusher with over 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns. Needs to be more careful as a passer. He had 14 interceptions, which isn't great.
Sure.
Obviously young, a building block that Bill O'Brien can step in and hopefully mold in a meaningful way. They also went out and they got Treshad Ward, the running back, formerly of Kansas State, of Florida State. I think the line's in okay shape. I think the receiver room is okay. B.O.B. did a good job in the portal. They really did. And they are dangerous, if only because of Thomas Castellanos. I think he's a good player. And I think he will benefit from O'Brien being in town. Why are they not dangerous? I'll give you.
Well, it's what do you think Bill O'Brien will do to him, though? Remember he sort of famously said Jalen Milroe is not a quarterback.
Yeah.
And now he's got this guy who arguably is best with his feet.
Yeah. I mean, I think he is the best available option at Boston College by a long shot. And it was clear that like Jeff Hafley had the vision to turn the reins over to him very quickly after seeing what he could do in an actual game. And so O'Brien took this job knowing that he was the guy. And it wasn't such that it was like it was with Jalen Milroe, where, it just sort of like happened upon Alabama. Alabama has much better options, let's say. They're not dangerous because of the defense.
No.
You know where this is going. Like they're switching schemes again, even though there's a lot back. They got 8 starters back. I'm not sure that's a good thing because this line was really bad last year. They didn't generate any pressure. So now they're bringing in Tim Lewis, NFL guy. If you've followed the NFL, you've kind of been aware of Tim Lewis for a while, but he's coming in, he's switching the scheme. I think he wants to run more of a 3-4, but there's going to be hybrid looks and that type of thing going on up front. So the defensive side of this is certainly more of a mess than on offense, where I think they've got things a little bit more in hand. But I would say this from a scheduling standpoint, Boston College, like the most recent versions we've seen of Boston College, didn't matter what the schedule was. It was always a challenge. This year, September, October are really tough. They open the year at Florida State. 2 weeks later, they're at Mizzou. They come back home. They play Michigan State. After that, they've got Western Kentucky, which, say what you want, we talked about them on our Conference USA preview. They can score points. They've also got a road game at Virginia Tech, a home game against Louisville, all before the end of October.
Yeah.
There's not much of a ramp-up period for B.O.B. here to get this program organized. Again, still dangerous because of Castellanos, but the defense is a question. How he utilizes the offensive pieces is, I think, an open question, kind of to your point. So I like Boston College. I'm not sure I'd go over 5, But I just think they will be plucky. They will be interesting. They will take someone to the gun. And because they've got a quarterback who's a dynamic dual threat player, that makes them, if nothing more, very watchable and interesting against the schedule.
The good thing is also, I think it was February 1st is what I just saw when Jeff Hafley left.
Yes.
So really, it's a year zero situation. You mentioned Bill O'Brien accepting the Ohio State offensive coordinator job before, of course, Chip Kelly takes the Ohio State offensive coordinator job, leaving his own head coaching job. So didn't have the standard portal window to sort of evaluate things. Didn't happen. It's not like Jeff Hafley was fired before the bowl game and Bill O'Brien gets in there to scramble and see who he can build relationships with in the portal and build a staff out. So they're super late in the process. And defensively, you're absolutely right? That like any improvement is going to be seen as such a hugely positive thing. I looked at the numbers, and I'm not a person who likes to point out specific numbers on the show because I think it's lost saying it out loud in an audio medium. But points per scoring opportunity, they gave up 5.2 points to teams as soon as a team got inside the 40. 5.2 was the worst in college football.
And Jeff Hafley's going to be DC at Green Bay.
For the Packers, yeah. So. Well, he's not assembling that roster.
No.
The red zone touchdown rate. You get inside the 20, teams were scoring touchdowns 81% of the time. Teams with goal to go, first and goal, second and goal, etc., right? So inside the 10, 96% of the time scored a touchdown.
Jesus.
It was automatic against this Boston College team. So if Tim Lewis and this staff can figure out ways to just force a field goal here and there, to just force a punt here and there, to just get off the field, they're legends. They're icons. They should get statues in Chestnut Hill.
Okay. Final team, Dan, the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, you're not high on Duke.
I'm not high on Duke at all.
Okay.
8-5.
You like their quarterback?
8-5 a year ago. They won the Birmingham Bowl against Troy. Over-under's 5.5. New coach, Mike Elko leaves for A&M. The new coach is an old ACC coach, Manny Diaz. Yeah, back in the ACC. I'm glad Manny Diaz is getting another bite at the apple because I think he got a raw deal at Miami, the way they forced him out. So I think this is a full rebuild at Duke. I think it's a full rebuild on offense and defense. There are heavy losses across the board. It's going to take a minute to get this program to a better place. That is why I don't like Duke. Why I think Duke is interesting is a couple reasons. The first is he hired Jonathan Brewer from SMU, formerly an offensive analyst under Rhett Lashley. He wants Duke to run a version of that SMU passing offense, which is interesting. Now, I'll be honest, when I read that they were going to do this, my first thought was that's not going to work. Not with the talent on hand. Not with the line, which is rebooting. I love Malik Murphy, the transfer from Texas, a monster of a man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like 3 good games from putting the Malik Murphy fathead down here. I really like him. Okay, I do. I just don't think he's accurate enough as a passer to run some sort of wide open passing scheme.
He seemed raw at times.
Yeah, he's very raw
for Texas when he was pressed into duty.
Very raw, like a specimen. He makes them interesting, if nothing more. But I don't know if running the SMU passing offense with Malik Murphy is a good fit. Maybe I'm wrong. In all likelihood, you're going to see a lot of scrambling this year because of that line, and I think that's what will make him an interesting watch. But certainly not the roster in its current state. There's just too many holes. I think Manny Diaz is a good coach. I always have. I stand by that. I'm glad, again, that he is back in the ACC, but it's going to take a minute before Duke is anything formidable. The schedule starts off pretty workable. It gets really hard. There's a 5-week stretch, starting in mid-October that goes home against FSU, home against SMU, at Miami, at NC State, a bye, and then home against Virginia Tech.
Seems tricky.
I would go under if I were betting on Duke.
Oh, more takes. Why it burns.
I would go under. There's not a lot here that I feel good about, other than Manny Diaz situationally, directionally in charge of a program, other than Malik Murphy as an incredible athletic specimen.
Yeah.
But Duke's not getting to a bowl, not with the schedule. I'd go under.
You know where the bowl is going through, though, right? The lacrosse field on the water at Northwestern. Let's go. Duke was here last year, I want to say. I think they were. So 2 straight years to Evanston. Yeah, Duke is playing on the temp bleachered field on Lake Michigan this year.
That's all I got.
You want to come up here and go watch Duke on the lake?
I do want to come out there
Manny
and watch.
Diaz on the lake?
We have to watch a Northwestern game on the lake.
I can probably hook it up.
We have to do that.
Yeah.
What's the ticket situation? Is that going to be tough?
I have no idea. I mean, it's like $15K, and it's like, I think mostly just behind the end zones or where the bleachers are. It's the same firm. I think it was, I want to give credit where it's due. I think it was Adam Rittenberg at ESPN wrote a feature about it. It's the same firm that did the, is it called the Waste Management Open?
Yeah.
Like the crazy
Phoenix.
16th hole? Yeah. That builds that temporary mini stadium every year, did the Northwestern one. So, yeah, Duke is there.
Have you been there lately to...
No, I need to do my part 2 because the bleachers are up, I believe.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think I agree with you on Duke. And another situation where, he doesn't have the full portal window and not starting late, but it's just tricky. And I don't know. I'm still not fully out on Duke. You looked at the roster closer than I did.
I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. It's just situational.
They lost a lot of quality. I know one of their better, I think their safety went to Oregon. I do know that, Brandon Johnson. But
and you lose Jordan Waters, right? Riley Leonard is gone. I don't know. It's too much new to feel good about.
Yeah.
As we record this in early to mid to late July, whenever.
Manny Diaz has coached in this conference. He has head coaching experience. He has the ability to do the things that he felt like he didn't do right last time at Miami with far less pressure at Duke. I don't know. Maybe I'm saying in the medium term, I could see this working out.
All right. Well,
Maybe
write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong. If we got
I have a correction, by the way.
Oh, you do? Do you want me to play
that? Yeah. I said it was a Palm Pilot that Kelly Rowland was holding and using Excel on. It was a T-Mobile Sidekick.
Okay, a Sidekick. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sorry about that.
solidverbal@gmail.com. If you've got something you want to get off your chest, let us know something that we got wrong. If we did,
happens.
We'll play it. We'll play the sound. We'll own up to it. That's fine. In the meantime, hit follow, hit subscribe. If you made it this far, we'd love to have you with us all season long. 3 episodes per week, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, just started. So you can be with us here all throughout the season. We'd love to have you. Verballers.com is our Patreon where you get bonus episodes, ad-free episodes, access to our Discord, access to the games that we're going to play as a community.
New merch. Yeah,
you'll get first dibs on merch as things get a little bit closer. And the Online Dynasty, which is about to kick up.
Oh.
Yeah, continue.
I feel like if you're this far into the episode, you're truly one of us. And you can learn more about being one of us at verballers.com.
See, maybe you should do the promos. I say the same things all the time. It's muscle memory. Maybe you should do this.
I think I could take a couple stabs. Sure.
If you're out there, if you made it this far, if you like the show, rate, review. It helps others find us. It helps assure others that it is indeed a fun show to hang out at. ACC in the books. Next up is the Big 12. Listen on our next episode. The Big 12 now with how many teams? 18 teams?
Sounds about right.
16 teams? I don't even know. It's 16 teams now for the Big 12. So we will do our part to break things down in 3 parts. We'll start with the overview and the emerging storylines and our tiers. We'll then move into 2 groups of 8 teams on part 2 and 3, Dan. But
yes. By the way,
how
many days until August 24th? Like 38 days until Georgia Tech, Florida State?
At time of recording.
Dublin?
At time of recording, yeah.
At time of recording. That's not that long.
It's getting big in the window, man. Be
Bambino and Grano. That's where I would recommend you eat in Dublin. That's all.
ACC in the books, Dan. Big 12 on deck for that guy over there in the heart of the Midwest, Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildebrand over here in Eastern Pennsylvania. Thanks for downloading, for listening, for supporting the show. Talk to y'all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.